Now you learned a little bit about mock. Let's try and use it now. What I want to do is I want to avoid this null reference exception when I create a service. And in order to do that, I need to have an implementation class for this location repository right here. And we are going to make it as a mock because with a mock we can actually start faking what's going to happen in each method that we do inside the mock. Don't worry, we'll get back to that later. But now let's just create an iLocation repository right here. Location repository equals, and this is where we now mock it. So we say mock, and there we put in the name of the interface we want to make a fake implementation of. And I say .object, and then we have the fake implementation right here. So this is actually, it looks like an iLocation service, but in reality it's actually what we are going to build later as a location repository inside the infrastructure layer later on. Good. In order to kind of get an iLocation service, right, that's what I need in the end. I had to create this mock so that I could actually pass in a location repository implementation and then avoid this null reference exception if I try to pass in a null location repository. That's why I'm doing it. So now we have that available, and what did I actually want to build? Well, I wanted to build the location service.create function. That's what we started out with, right? Like you see my method name, public void, I want to create, and then I want to try and create with a location that is null. That should throw a null reference exception. That's the test that I want to build, because finally I'm starting to build some real production code for creating a location. Finally. Let's try and see. It seems that this guy is not working. I don't know create yet. I'm doing test driven, so of course I don't know create yet. Let's try and make that method. You do that by saying Alt Enter or Option Enter on the Mac. Let's do that, and then it says, do you want this method to be created inside the location service? Yes, please. Of course, you could do this manually if you want to. You can just go in and make this method. It's really up to you. Now it's available, so I just want that to be there. Let's go back to the test. Don't worry about this guy failing right now. We'll get back to that later. What else do we need? Well, I want to pass in null right here, but it says it's actually a location, which is a business object. So let's look at that. I have this business object right here that I want to kind of pass in. So we need to create this now to pass in a location. We don't need to put in the properties yet, but at least we need to create the object itself, the entity. So let's jump into that and create that entity. And I'm just going to make a small trick right here. So I'm going to explain that the null is actually a very specific type of location. I know that looks kind of crazy, but it's a way for me to kind of prove that even though it's null, so it's no value right now, it's of this type. So I need that location type, and let's actually go and create that. Now, I know where to put this location type. It should be all the way up here in the entities, because that's where all my entities go in the core and the clean architecture, right? I'm going to add a new class up here, and it's going to be just called location. There we go. Add it to Git. Now we have the location. Now this could be an interface, or it could extend an interface. That's up to you. But right now I'm just going to keep it simple. So now we have the location available, but notice in order to use this one, we of course need a couple of references. So first of all, we need a reference down here in the service. So I'll go down to the in the test, of course. I'll go and I'll add a reference for the core. I'll say add. As soon as I do that, you'll notice that I can actually import the location now inside the test. There we go. Now it's imported here, but I still get an error, and that's because if you mouse over, you'll see the create method does not contain right now a location in that method. I try to Alt Enter, but it'll say I don't know what to do. The reason it doesn't know what to do is because this guy, the iLocation service, also needs a reference to the entities. Let's go up there again. This is the guy I'm talking about, iLocation service. I need a reference for the entities. Let's add that one right here. Gasmush Boomy, and there we go. Now this guy actually can, when he create, he can get an location, location, location. That's how the real estate people say, and that's how I'm going to say right now. So now he knows there should be a location when I call the create function. Okay, let's go back to our unit test. So our unit test actually passes right now, which is perfectly fine. I pass in null, and then the final thing, like we did before, I want to just make sure that when this happens, it should throw an exception. So let's try and do an assert dot throws the exception of null reference exception in my case, and then I need to do a bit of magic right here to kind of explain that you can pass in some parameters. There's some information here I'm kind of hiding from you right now, but you have to do like this lambda expression right here. After you've added the throw, you have to do this lambda to kind of figure out this is the method I want to execute, and this is the lambda expression to kind of get to do that. Okay? Now it says test code right here. That's not something I write. That's something the IDE writes for me. Okay? Sweet. So now I save this and I can finally run my unit test to see that this is now working. Happy days. But I get an exception, right? Why? Well, of course I get an exception. I didn't do the implementation of the location service. So again, it's test driven, right? I tried to run my unit test. I can't because I'm not done yet. So let's try and go back to the Explorer and notice here's where the error is. Let's go to this guy, and now the unit test has forced me, because I'm using this service, to do an implementation of the missing member, and that's actually the create. How did I do that? Let's just try again. I press Alt or Option Enter, and I press Enter again for implementing missing members. You can also press the small lamp right here. You can also, there's a lamp also in Visual Studio. You can also just press Alt Enter and another Enter, and then it's implemented right here. Another thing you'll notice, now I'm actually having the method, so I'll probably not get an exception. Let's try and go back and run the unit test again. Again, remember we're test driven. So let's run the unit test and see what happens. The unit test runs this time, but fails. And if you notice the error, it says not implemented exception. So I'm not done yet. Okay, back to the Explorer, back to my service. Why did this fail? Well, because it throws a new not implemented because it's not implemented yet. So what did I need to do to kind of solve this unit test right here? Let's have a look. I was supposed to throw a null reference exception because this guy is being passed a null value right here. Okay, back to the service. And let's hide this, and let's actually say if location is null, throw new null reference exception. Then you can go yourself now and actually add the part that I did in the other setup where I sent in a message right here. Go and fix that yourself before the next lesson, because I'll have it fixed for the next lesson. So that's it for this lesson. Let's just see the unit test running. And again, the point is right here that I'm doing this test driven. I'm not getting any code into my production code, which is the location service right now, unless there's a reason to have it in here. So I don't have any mess in here. I only get the code that I need right now for the current unit test. Let's end it there. See you next time. Have fun.